Hello and welcome back or welcome to episode 2 of the Elizabeth Knits podcast. My name is Elizabeth and it's a pleasure to share my knitting and crafting journey here with you on YouTube. This is a knitting podcast primarily where I will talk about finished objects, what I'm knitting on, what I'd love to knit, so some dream knitting, and some of the acquisitions or things that I have bought to help me along my way with some new projects. First of all, I'd really like to say a huge thank you to anyone who took the time to make a lovely kind comment on my previous video. It would have been really lovely to get some more out in the meantime, but life has got in the way of that, so here we are now instead. Thank you though. I read all of the comments. I think I've responded to most of them, and it was really lovely that people had taken their time to get involved. I started this podcast to contribute in some way to the online knitting community, which I feel I've got a lot out of since returning to knitting and enjoying it as a main hobby, and it's really nice to be a part of that. So if you don't already subscribe to the podcast, that would be lovely, but there is no obligation to do so. If you like what you see, please press the like button, and if you press the bell, then you'll be notified of the next video, which I think there will be another one after this. And I'm over on Instagram as Elizabeth Knits Pod, so if you're not already on there and you'd like to see some of the things I'm referring to or photographs of finished objects, then that's the place to go. So that's Elizabeth Knits Pod. Okay, so without further ado, I'm going to get on to some knitting. This is a recent finished object. I spoke about this in the first episode. I think I had not done much more than casting on. I'd got a bit of the yoke knitted, and since then I finished this. The pattern is the Crescendo sweater by the lovely Knit Purl girl, who is Sophie. She has an amazing channel as well, which I imagine if you're watching this you already know about. This was knitted on 6, 6.5 and 7mm needles across different parts of the project. I started off by casting on a slightly different size to the one I ended up knitting, just because I did some yarn substitution for this. So I think I cast on for the size B, which is the same number of cast on stitches anyway for A and B. I cast on for the size B, which is a 95cm bust, which would have given me the recommended positive ease in the recommended yarn. But I did some yarn substitution, which I'll come back to in a minute. And it meant after I tried on the yoke that I decided I was actually going to knit the size A, and that was going to fit better with the gauge that I was getting. I didn't swatch for this because I knew that I was making a similar substitution, but that I was likely to get a little bit more fabric per inch than with the recommended yarn, which I wanted to knit this with something I'd already got in stash, so I didn't want to use the recommended one. Not to say it wouldn't work beautifully with that, I'm sure it would, but I wanted to knit this from stash specifically, and I bought a second yarn to hold with it. So some things to say about the pattern. It was a lovely straightforward pattern to work. I didn't really have any trouble with the lovely lace detail which happens around the yoke. It stops here, and the rest of it is really just knitted in the round. I knitted my sleeves on a slightly larger needle because small circumference knitting is often a bit tighter for a lot of people, and I'm one of those people. I know that I definitely need to use an ever so slightly bigger needle. I only went up by 0.5 of a millimetre or a millimetre, like a size, between the body and the sleeves, and the stitches are identical in size, which is perfect. I'm pretty sure that's recommended in the pattern. Be very surprised if it wasn't on these. Sophie's she seems really super diligent, and her patterns are really easy to follow and really detailed. I would highly recommend it to anybody. If you are curious about knitting a little bit of lace work and you feel like you're ready for just like beginner lace almost, then this would be a really good place to start. So I'd really recommend it. I used Kiddlestitch Alpaca with Merino Chunky weight as my main yarn, and I said I wanted to use from stash. That's what I've got left. This was a purchase from a couple of years ago that didn't get used for my original plan and has sat for at least probably 3 years, not really having much to do. You can see that it's just a single, I can't remember, it's singles, basically merino singles. It's not plied, that's the word I'm looking for. It's like a single ply. So it needed, in my opinion, something to hold it with for a bit of structure. So I've got a tiny sample of it held together with my second yarn there. I substituted a mohair, which was what was recommended, for the Rowan Alpaca Classic. So there's a decent percentage of alpaca in this. I think the main yarn was 40% alpaca, 50% merino, and a tiny bit of acrylic, 10%, if I do the maths right. And Alpaca Classic is a superfine alpaca with a cotton core. So it's this is probably blowing out a little bit, but this is the best light I can get at this time of day when my small person is in bed. This is like almost like a proper baby blue, like a traditional baby blue powder blue colour. I think I showed this last time anyway, but I've held together the Rowan Alpaca Classic and the Kiddlestitch Alpaca with Merino Chunky weight, and that gave me not quite gauge but not far off, and sizing down one size was just right for me. The only adaptation I've made is that with the neckline on the pattern, this is a folded neckline, and I felt like because I'd already added bulk with the extra alpaca rather than mohair, I felt like it might look a bit too poofy around the neckline, and I was quite aware of potentially running out of yarn. Even from the start, I knew I had got just enough to knit this, so I felt like by not folding the neckline and just stopping it at 7 centimeters, that would work out well. And I figured if I had a bit of extra yarn left at the end, I could have always made it a little bit longer. It's written as a crop, and I've knitted it as a crop. It's not really cropped. It goes, you know, where the waist of my jeans is, and that's exactly where I want it to be. There's quite a bit of bulk up here, so I feel like it suits me better to not have a lot of bulk around the bottom half too. If I was to knit it again, I think I knitted some extra rows. It basically says knit until you're ready, I think, to split for the sleeves, and I probably knitted a bit further than I needed to. I've got quite a deep yoke and I probably could have split it a little bit sooner, but actually it's a really nice fit. I'm really happy with it. It won't stop me from wearing it at all. I cast it off middle of March and it's now the beginning of April, and I've worn it lots and lots and lots. It looks great with jeans. It's a nice put together pattern for like looking a bit smart without looking really overdone. So there we go. I think that's everything I've got to say about it really, but that's what I'm wearing today and my first finished object. My second finished object is not something I showed as a work in progress last time. I again had some yarn in stash, which is this gorgeous, again another alpaca blend. This is called Serenity Chunky, I think, and this was a gift from a non-knitting friend probably 2 or 3 years ago. She came up to visit. She likes to bring a hostess gift, which is amazing, and she brought 5 or 6 skeins of this absolutely gorgeous coloured, like sort of mulberry wine coloured yarn. I can't find the label right now, but I'm sure it's called Wendy Serenity Chunky. I don't know if it's still available anywhere. I'm sure you could find it on Ravelry or somewhere similar if you really wanted to. There are plenty of yarns in this colour, and this is not something I'd now have bought for myself, but it's so very soft and it's been sat around for a long time, and I just wanted to use it and have it knitted into a garment. So I think it's only like 20 or 30% alpaca and the rest is acrylic. You wouldn't know it. It is really super soft. It's not got that squeaky plasticky feel that some acrylics have got. I'm by no means a yarn snob, but I do like a natural fibre because I like my sweaters and things to be able to breathe. And I find that's harder with an acrylic. And I'm willing to hand wash if I need to. So superwash it's not a necessity for me, except for some kids' knits. I'll come back to that later. So yeah, anyway, I got this, about 6 skeins of it, I think, maybe 5, maybe 6. I remember her coming up and saying, I asked the lady in the shop how many skeins I would need for a jumper. And jumper's what we call a sweater most of the time in the UK, like a knitted jumper. And that means a pullover style sweater, just in case. I know last time some people were watching from Canada and America. So yeah, she had asked the lady in the shop. The lady in the shop obviously very sensibly said, depends on what she's knitting, depends on what she's knitting it into. But as a jumper, if she's, a UK size 10-ish, then a small jumper, you're going to be okay with 5 or 6 skeins. But then when you start to look up chunky patterns, you often need a bit more than that. So it's kind of languished and I've not quite found the right project for it. And I love it. I think it's a gorgeous colour, but it just didn't ever find the right place to like join together and be made. So I then decided I would knit a hat out of it, and I knitted quite a while ago now. I think it was maybe a Christmas present during lockdown sometime, when that was a thing. I was posting things out and I knitted a hat with some ribbon around the bottom and a pom-pom on the top. If I can find a picture, I'll pop it up on the Instagram or in the comments below here. Not very tech savvy, so inserting a picture is still a bit beyond me. I'll figure it out eventually. Anyway, so I knitted her a hat from it, which is lovely. It's super soft, but I didn't want like 2 or 3 or 4 hats out of the same yarn. So then that left me with a really, really awkward 4 skeins, or like 3.5, 4 skeins. Maybe I had 5 originally and it's left me with like 3.5. So I decided to make it up as I went along. I really like a slipover, and on the last podcast I showed, I think as a finished object, the Petite knit weekend slipover. This yarn wouldn't have done for that pattern in quite the same way, so I kind of made one up for myself. It's the first time I've ever self-drafted. In sewing it would be called self-drafting, and I was always more of a sewer than a knitter until recently. So I planned the pattern as I went along. I basically cast on how many stitches I thought for like a wide-ish neckline so that I could get a shirt collar. I think I cast on with like 6.5mm needles, or maybe even 7s. And then, no, I cast on from the bottom. I did this bottom up because I knew I wasn't going to have tons and tons. And I kind of measured a garment I'd already got and thought, I know that I want it about however long. So I thought I can knit upwards. Don't really know why. Maybe partly because I didn't want to do back and front, and I didn't want to use the same construction as the weekend slipover. That's what it was. I didn't really know how long I'd want for armholes or anything like that. I very much made this up as I went along. And it's worked just fine. So this is my second finished object. It hits me in a very similar place to this jumper and or sweater, sorry, the Crescendo sweater, and I'm happy with it. I don't have a great deal else to say about it. Sorry about the crazy colour and the blowing out there. I'm having to record under not natural light, which I know is really not ideal, but I've had to wait until my little boy was in bed tonight to do this. So yeah, I am quite happy with this. It's really nice to have it out of my stash. Slightly annoyingly, that only took 2, maybe 2.5 skeins. So I now need to find a use for my last skein in a bit. It may become another hat. I've got a very slim friend who would really like a slipover like this. So a bit of me is thinking of casting it on, making it a lot narrower than mine because she's very petite, and seeing how far I can get, because this didn't really take very long to knit, like a few evenings, and it was on and off the needles because it's on such a huge gauge. This knitted up really nicely though, the yarn, and it feels such a waste to have it. So out of my non-sweater quantity of yarn, I may well end up with a like size UK small slipover, a size extra small UK slipover, and a hat. I can't complain about that, can I? So there we go. Anyway, the pile on the floor grows. So next I'm going to talk to you about what's actually on my needles at the moment. Following on from last time, some of these things might not be exactly as expected or as I originally planned. That's fine. This is a hobby. I do it because I love it. I do it for fun. And bearing that in mind, my sister is having a little girl in June. When I last recorded, that felt a long time away. I felt like I got loads of time to knit something. I decided to knit what in the UK is often called a receiving blanket or a car seat blanket for baby to come home from the hospital. It will be June. June in the UK can be lovely and warm and beautiful, and sunny, or sometimes not so much. So all bets are off when it comes to what they're actually going to need to come home from the hospital, and whether they'll need a blanket at all. But for her little boy, I knitted a blanket and they brought him home from the hospital using it in the car seat. So I decided to do the same, and she asked me to do the same for her little girl. I cast on using this, which is not my usual, I think you can see that okay, not my usual kind of yarn, but something again that I've had in stash for a long time. There's a theme here. Stash busting is a thing. You'll see why in a minute. Anyway, so this is like a really pale sort of shell pink with a tiny bit of glitter in it. Can't remember what that's called. The fibre that they use for it. It's very much a synthetic yarn, but she has kind of specified synthetic is better because she wants to be able to chuck it in the washing machine, and she doesn't want to have to ring me every time it needs washing. This is a young baby we're talking about, so it'll need washing regularly. I cast on with this on, I think, size 3.75 or 4mm needles, and I quite liked the fabric I was getting. It was lovely and loose and drapey. But then I was a bit unconvinced because it's a synthetic fibre, and I was thinking, well, when I block it out, those stitches will even out. They looked ever so slightly uneven to me, and that really bothers me. It's one of the things that I really don't like. It means I often change up and down needle sizes or substitute different yarns for patterns because I'm not quite getting on with exactly what I see. So I cast this on. I knitted about maybe a hand's width, more than 6 inches, maybe like 8 or 10 inches. And I ripped it all back because it was really bugging me that even though it was a really nice drapey blanket, it was not neat and tidy. That was really going to bother me. And then I started to worry about, well, if there were some little holes, could tiny baby get her fingers through them? Could she get caught? I feel like that's very unlikely based on the stitch pattern. I was just doing back and forth. So it's basically like a garter blanket. Anyway, I recast on using what I had originally planned, which was holding 2 strands together. So this is the sparkly white that I've got, and my plan is to make it a colour fade. So I'll use like half of what I've got of the sparkly white, and then I will fade to the sparkly pink and then carry on in the sparkly pink. So I'll knit like half what I've got, start to fade across, knit the other half with this. So the idea being that it will slowly go from white to pink, basically. That's what a fade is. I don't know why I've just explained that. I'm sure all of you knew that. So I've literally got like a couple of inches, 3 inches, maybe not even that. But hopefully you can see this here, the stitches, although it's not so drapey, it's still lovely and soft and flexible, and it will be really snug. Although it's not so drapey, it's definitely a much nicer fabric, and I think it will stand up to a bit of use better, like being washed or being snagged and things. I don't think it will be so easy to snag because it's got those two yarn. What's the word I'm looking for? Anyway, two held together. I want to say threads, it's not threads. Anyway, tripping over my words. But, so, hopefully the next time you see this, it'll be much, much further on. This is very much going to be my mindless project. A lovely lady commented, I cannot remember her name for the life of me, she commented really soon after I posted the first video about having like the 3 bears of projects, like something that's really easy, something that's like somewhere in the middle, and something that takes a bit of brain work. This will be the really easy one because it's like 3 stitches, yarn over, knit, 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 yarn over, knit, knit, knit. So I need this, it's like really good. I think sometimes people call it popcorn knitting. So hopefully the next time you see that, it'll be, if not a finished object, then much, much further on than what it is now. This is really tatty because I ripped it all back, but since it's being knitted into the same blanket anyway, I'm not going to like wash it and reuse. I don't have time for that. If it was a natural fibre and I wasn't going to use it for a little while, probably would. But for this, I feel like it's going to be fine. That's my story, sticking to it. Okay, my next whip was one that I was trying to figure out what to do about last time. Don't know whether I cast it on or not. If I did, I definitely ended up ripping it back and starting again. So last time I showed how I swatch. I've got a little pile, just a mini pile of them over here. I showed that I like to label everything because I like to be careful and precise about things, and yeah, I'm a bit obsessive, why not? So on each of my swatches, this is only a little mini one obviously, but on each of my swatches I always write the yarn, where it came from, the colour name, whether I've held it double or single or even triple, which is rare for me, what the fibre content is. I write what needle size I used. I often do purl bumps on the right side of my swatch for telling what needle size. So like if it was a 4mm, I would do 4 purl bumps on the correct side. If it was a 4.5, I'd do 4, leave a couple of stitches, and then do another one to remind me that it's a half size. Quite a lot of people use that method. This, I also then block my swatches because I'm trying really hard to be a good girl like that. So last time I think I had swatched for the, well, I'd basically swatched up some of the amazing Woolyknit cone yarn, and this is the Merino cone, which is a 2-ply, yeah, 2-ply, yeah, 2-ply, or 4-ply, anyway, yeah, it's 2-ply because holding it double gives you approximately DK. This is called Bianco, which is just their cream. I feel like this is probably undyed or unbleached, but it doesn't say that, so you can't really take my word for it. Last time in acquisitions I talked about a Woolyknit order. Most of that's behind me. As you can see, these are quite autumnal colours that I ordered the cones in, and I am trying to think about what I'm sensibly going to be able to wear in the UK over summer now whilst I'm knitting, at least some of the time. Come back to that. So there's my swatch. I had swatched this held single with silk mohair that I'd got from Beehive Yarns in their Christmas or New Year like discount. It wasn't like a huge sale, it was just a few select things on the website that were reduced, and I had COVID at Christmas and felt sorry for myself and placed an order. I bought some mohair because I knew I would use it up, and it's gorgeous quality. Everything from Beehive Yarns is beautiful, but I haven't quite found the project for it yet. So turns out I still haven't, because I held it double. I think I showed these last time, but just very quickly. I held it double with the mohair. So single mohair, double Woolyknit cone of Merino. It's beautifully soft. It's really drapey, but I just felt like it was a little bit thicker than it should be. I then held it one strand, or maybe I started with this, but I held one strand mohair, one strand Woolyknit. In my opinion, this was not even enough, so you can see like the odd bits here, and it was beautifully drapey, super soft, but a bit see-through, as you can see there with the light behind me. So in the end, I took the mohair out and I just knitted it straight up, two together, and I felt like my stitches are quite neat. I knew for the pattern I was doing that I was going to have some knits and purls, and when I blocked it, it really bloomed nicely. It filled in those little tiny gaps that there originally were. So I ripped back what I'd started of the Ankers sweater with the mohair and thought there's plenty of patterns out there with mohair in, I'll use it for one of those. And I haven't done, now obviously I haven't like blocked this or anything, it will grow because it's ribbing, and it needs this is going to need a stern blocking to really neaten out those stitches, because you can kind of see there is a bit of that like tricky unevenness that I don't like, because it's knits and purls all the way around for like 5 rib sections. But I think, if you can hopefully see that, once it's actually blocked and I've like stretched those stitches out to how they should look, or pulled them this way to how they should look, which is how they appear on the pattern, I think once I've done that, it will look really lovely. This is very much an off-white. I've got a white bedspread, and sometimes I've sat in bed knitting and I've been like, do I like this or not? But I think as soon as I see it next to something that isn't white, it's really clear that it's a creamy, natural white rather than a true like bright white. With a natural fibre, you can get that bright white, but it's going to have been bleached, and I quite like that this, even if it has been bleached, it's not super harsh. I don't think I could find anywhere whether it really is the natural colour, but it strikes me as it's likely to. We often have sheep outside my window and they look about this colour. So yeah, next time you see this, hopefully it will be a little bit more complete. I'm on the final section of ribbing, which I'm really glad to have got to the end of. Not because it's not easy to knit, it's really quite brainless, but I'm just a bit bored of just doing one by one rib. Some people are really quick at it and I'm not, and yeah, I'm looking forward to getting onto the just knit part. I had a recommendation from someone either on Instagram or as a comment on the previous podcast, the first episode, about the Ankers sweater, or I commented on someone else's. Either way, somebody contacted me about the Ankers sweater and said that they'd put short rows in at the back aft, because obviously they're not written into the pattern, and there's not really anywhere where you could put them with the rib sections without it looking really strange. So they said they'd got to the end of the last rib section, then put the short rows in to just raise the back a little bit, and I think I might do that. I haven't fully decided, but I think generally now if I don't put in short rows, then I feel at the end like I should have put in short rows. I like to be able to tell the difference between the front and the back of my sweater, so I like a few short rows at least, you know, like even if it's just an inch or so, but ideally more than that, so that I can really see the difference between front and back. Might be to do with my body shape or body type, or it might just be what I'm comfortable with, but that's what I like. So my plan is to get to the end of this rib section, have a look at whether I want to do the short rows in the back, and then after that hopefully it will be plain sailing and just knit with my 2 strands, is the word I was looking for before, with my 2 strands of Woolyknit Merino. The yarn's knitting up beautifully, as I said on the swatch. I know because I gave it its little bath and its block afterwards. It evened out beautifully, it bloomed really nicely, it's really soft. It still smells a little bit sheepy, but in the nicest possible way. So highly recommend Woolyknit. I know that Rebecca from the Cray Bear is a huge devotee of them, and she definitely influenced me to buy my order of cones and things. I would love to order from them again, but while I've got those looking at me, at least until I finish using this one for this sweater, I feel like I can't really justify anymore. Their DK keeps nosing at me and popping up, but I've made an order from elsewhere for this time. I'll definitely come back to them in the future though. The Petite Knit Ankers sweater my size is really easy to knit so far. I'm not a big fan of just knitting loads and loads and loads of 1x1 rib, but that doesn't make it difficult. It just means that sometimes I need a break from that. So my 3 bears of projects currently is that super easy blanket, which I've only just recast on after ripping it all back. This is kind of my middle one, I suppose, and then it will become an easy one once it turns to stockinette in the round. And my brainwork one. This probably wouldn't be brainwork for some people, but I'm not a hugely experienced lace knitter, so I think that's why it's caused me a bit of angst recently. So this is a relatively new pattern release. I've bought yarn for this, so this is not from a previous acquisition that I showed last time, and it's also not from stash. As I said, I'm trying really hard to knit from stash. I'm not trying to get rid of my stash of yarn, I'm just trying to use up some of what I've got, so that more or less, I think, it's not an official aim, but more or less for each garment that I knit from stash, I can then buy yarn for a new garment. So I don't have a lot of sweater quantities, or I didn't. These are pretty much a sweater quantity each for me. I don't have tons of sweater quantities. I've got like maybe 5 or maybe now 6 having ordered what's behind me here. So I don't keep a massive stash. A lot of what I've got is like single skeins that are left over from previous projects or craft projects from years ago. I knitted quite a lot of kids jumpers for my little boy who's just turned 3. So the kind of things where they might take like 2 and a tiny bit of something. So I've got like most of a skein left. So a lot of what I've got, I guess if you'd be interested to see, then next time I could put in like a cutaway or film in front of my shelves where I've got everything laid out. I'm one of those people who likes to be able to see my yarn, because if I can see it, it'll give me ideas and I can think, oh yeah, maybe that would work for colourwork. So I've got lots and lots, what I would consider lots and lots of odds and ends that are not necessarily going to work together. And it means if I want a full-size sweater for me, I've almost certainly got to buy the yarn new. This was pretty much my only exception where I'd got a full, only just sweater quantity. All that to say, it was Mother's Day in the UK this month, and I ordered some yarn for myself because my husband very kindly said, I don't know what you want, do you need any more knitting needles? And I said, actually, for Christmas and my birthday, I had knitting needles so that I'd got pretty much a full set of everything I think I need for now. So I'm okay, thanks. But you could buy me some yarn. And he immediately said, that's fine. If that's what you actually want and you'll use it and you're happy with it, then tell me what you want ordering. So I'll come back to the order that I placed, but I've started knitting it up already. This is lovely Drops Nepal in colourway 8905, which is like, it's really blowing out, sorry, unnatural light. This is a really, really beautiful, like deep teal colour. It's a mixed colour, so there's definitely a bit of darker blue and a bit of more turquoisey, greeny blue in it. You can get, holding it here, you can just about get the impression of the true colour. It's very dark compared to most of the things I've ever knit with before. Even the navy blue, or like royal to navy blue cardigan that I knitted last time, this feels like a deeper, darker colour on the needles. It's gorgeous. It's so soft. It's so like squishy. I've never knitted with Drops Nepal before. My Mother's Day order, spoiler alert, there's more, was an order from Lindehobby, which was all drops, because I've knitted with Drops Charisma and Drops, like the fingering weight sock, well, something that I used for socks, just for a single pair, but I'd never had the Nepal, and I bought this specifically because the pattern I wanted to knit was Drops Nepal, and I was like, do you know what, it would be so nice to actually knit out of the recommended yarn, because I never really do. Sometimes that's because I think the recommended yarns are quite expensive for what they are, and I might want something a bit more affordable. Sometimes it's just because I've got what I've got, like in the case of the Crescendo sweater, I already had the main yarn that I wanted to use, so I bought something else to go with, and I wanted this like lovely Marley effect, so I went to a local yarn shop. I like to buy in person where I can. That's not always the case, but in person where I can. Clearly here it's not the case. Didn't go all the way to Lindehobby. But yeah, so for once I actually bought recommended yarn, and I thought, oh, do you know what, that'll be so lovely, because I will just start the sweater as my swatch, and I did. So this is the Malwina sweater by Vert and Rose. I think this is her first sweater release. It's beautiful. I bought it on like release weekend, so I think I got a slight discount on it. I can't believe this is a first sweater, like bearing in mind how much there is going on with it. It's beautiful, but it has given me a headache. I have ripped this small section, which is like neck and probably 5 inches of yoke. I've ripped that back no less than 4 times, all the way back to the ribbing, because it has taken me quite a while to get my head around this raglan detail here. So I feel like this is an absolutely beautiful pattern. I don't think it's the pattern that the issue is with. I think it's just me. In the end, what I needed to do was, in my trusty notebook, I needed to basically write out every line to make sure that I didn't miss a short row whilst I was also concentrating on the raglan detail going back and forth, and also that I didn't miss any of the yarn over raglan details when they came up in the pattern. I think one of the times I actually ripped it back and then realised I hadn't made a mistake, which was really frustrating. So I wasn't going to be beaten by it. It didn't go in the naughty corner, because the yarn is so beautiful and the pattern is so gorgeous that I just really want to have it. This is not about the process for me. I did not enjoy ripping that back and knitting it and ripping it back and knitting it. But look how beautiful it is. This is probably not the best colour to show off this lovely detail, but it's just like a lovely raglan detail. So either side of this little narrow cable, there's like increases going on. I think you can sort of see it, but I can try and get better photos of this and I'll pop them on Instagram in the light. It's lovely. I love it up close. In real life, it looks gorgeous. It probably looks really simple and really easy to do. Probably is really simple and really easy to do. But I think a lot of the time in the evening, when I actually sit down to knit, my brain's got a lot of other things to process. And maybe when I should have picked up something simpler, some nights I've picked up this just because I really want to knit with this. And sorry, something large just went past on the road outside. Sometimes I think I've picked this up just because I so want to have this squishy loveliness in my hands, and then maybe I should have just popped it down and thought I need to do something easier. So anyway, I absolutely love it. I think I've got maybe only another 12 rows or so of the raglan and the raglan detail and increases to go. Maybe, yeah, I think something like 12 rows, so like 6 more rounds of increasing, maybe a little more than that. Now that I've written it out and now that I've got it into my head and I've switched from short rows to in the round, it's much easier to follow. I'll keep you posted on this one because I really want it I want to wear this. It's going to be so soft and so squishy. Drops Nepal is 100% wool, and it's so soft already. If it softens up even more when I wash it, then that will be amazing. On the sample knit, it's knitted in Drops Nepal in like this beautiful blush rose colour pink. And I've obviously gone for the total opposite end to that, but I just love this colourway. The sample, you can really see that the stitch definition is really beautiful, and that was another thing that made me lean towards actually knitting it in the recommended yarn, because I think sometimes when you really want to see those beautiful stitches and you can't, it's really upsetting when you've put all that time and effort in, especially for something like these where they are only like a slip stitch sort of, I think they are a cable even though they use slip stitches. I think they're cabling without the cable needle. I think that's how they'd be described. Maybe someone can tell me below. Now that I've got it, I do think it's fine, but it just took me a bit more brain work than I was expecting, I think, and I'm hoping that the end product will be so worth it. So that's it. As I said last time, I am a relatively monogamous knitter. I clearly subscribe to that like group of people who needs to have an easier project and a more brainwork project, and that is my more brainwork project at the moment. Eventually that will become straight stockinette as it goes further down, and I'll probably cast on something else to make my brain tick over of an evening when I probably should not be thinking about anything at all. There we go. So I think we're now on to plans and acquisitions, and I'm hoping that you've stopped off somewhere along the way to get yourself a drink or to take a break. I hope that you're keeping well, and if you're still with me at this point, thank you so much. If you would like to see some of the things I've acquired and what I'm planning to cast on next, I've clearly got 2 sweaters there that I need to keep on plugging away at, and a blanket, which is I've chucked on the floor down here, that I need to keep plugging away at, but I am going to cast on at least one more thing this week, says the lady who just said she was a monogamous knitter, because it's just under 2 weeks to Easter in the UK, and I would really like my little boy to have an Easter sweater. So I have some yarn in stash that I'm going to use for that. I've got a free pattern that I've downloaded, and I'm going to adapt from the sizing of that, and here's my plan. So I have been designing some little colourwork motifs. I'll hold them what to a normal person would be the correct way up. I just think they're so cute, those little bunnies. I'm going to make him, so this is plans at the moment, so thanks if you're still joining me. I'm going to cast this on this week. I'm going to get past the raglan detail on the Malwina and then cast this on, because I think that will be like not that much longer, and then I can just cast this on, and then I'll probably knit almost solely on this, because I'd really like him to have this for Easter weekend. Easter is not like a huge enormous celebration here in the UK like it is in some countries. It totally depends on your religion and your beliefs, I appreciate, but in some countries it's, you know, way huge thing. Here we don't do like the tradition of Easter sweaters necessarily, but I just think they're really cute, and he's a little boy so we can totally get away with it. So I'm going to do a stranded colourwork yoke, and somewhere within that stranded colourwork, I am more or less going to make this up as I go along, somewhere within that stranded colourwork I'm going to incorporate my little bunnies, because I think they are really cute. So I've based this on a 24 stitch pattern repeat, which I think will work. I'm going to adapt the Little Missy pattern by Drops Design, which is, I think the sample is knitted in like white and yellow, so that kind of made me think Easter already. And I'm going to use some yarn that I've got in stash, which I originally bought for a crochet project a few years ago, and I got cracking on it. I think it was for a crochet cardigan where it was like every other row was like a granny stitch. I think I've not crocheted for a while, so it's dropped out of my head, but it was basically a row of grey and then a row of a colour, a row of grey, a row of another colour, and it was like a rainbow almost as you went up. So I've had like a single skein of all of these colours on just under a single skein, because I chained on. I started it, I got 18 inches in maybe, and I decided I'd just use it as like a little runner for underneath. There's a little mini table under my craft table, and it's there stopping things from slipping off. So it's in use, it looks lovely, I really like it, but I've ended up, because I bought the yarn for the whole project, with, let's count, probably like at least 10 skeins, where I've got probably 8 different colours of Carron Supersoft, which is 100% acrylic yarn. It's not particularly squeaky, it is really soft. It feels almost more on the cottony end than the woolly end. So I've got no idea how this will work for stranded colourwork, but it's a kid's jumper. I can chuck this in the washing machine really easily, and I've got lots of different colours of it. I might as well give it a bash. So I'm going to knit the main body in this deep grey colour, like a mid grey, and then I'm going to go down from the neck down. It's definitely a top down circular yoked sweater. So I'm going to cast on in the grey, and then I'm going to change to this powder blue colour for a few rows of the colour work on and off with the grey. I think that'll look cute. Then I might do a row or two. I might even do a full solid row of the blue. I am really going to make this up a bit as I go along. I've got like a bit of a plan here to help me. I'm not going to worry too much if I stick to it or not. I'm just going to see what looks nice. Then I think I'm going to do the rabbits as grey. I might do them with a yellow background and a bit of green underneath. So it will be a very springy sweater, very Easter, very colourful. So here's my colour palette. They were all yarns that I already had. Would have been really nice if I'd got a white as well. I don't know if the place where I got these locally is even still stocking them. If they are, then lovely. Maybe I'll call and get a white, because it would look really nice as a yoke background for the grey bunnies. For the pattern in the size that I want, I need 200 grams of the main colour, and the only thing I've got 200 grams of is the grey, because everything else I bought a single skein. Like I said, I have a lot of single skeins. This might be a good way of getting some of them used up. I wouldn't usually use acrylic yarn for colour work, but my tension is fairly straightforward usually, as long as I use the right needle size. So I'm going to give it a go, and if it doesn't work, then I'll use some other yarn. It'll be fine. Okay, so that's my plan for my little boy's Easter sweater. I haven't procured anything for that. The pattern, well, I have, but the pattern was free from Ravelry, and it's actually called the Little Missy. To me, it looks like very much a gender neutral pattern. It's just called the Little Missy, and actually I'm not using the colourwork plan anyway. I'm going to just insert my own colourwork motifs and use that for like the cast on numbers for his size and stuff. So I think it's written for an approximately DK weight. That Carron Supersoft is probably more like maybe more of a worsted. It's probably still technically a DK. It's going to be fine. We'll see how it goes. Okay, fun stuff. Acquisitions. If you have joined me up until now and you don't want to hear about what I have been busy buying, it's totally understandable, and thank you for joining me, and you are welcome to go on your merry way and have a wonderful day or weekend or whatever you're doing. If you do want to stay with me, in the next few minutes I'm just going to talk about some of the things I've bought or that I've had as a present. And when I say as a present, I really do mean as a present for Mother's Day. I've not been gifted anything, I don't have any affiliations with anyone, I don't have any sponsored content or anything like that. So the first thing I needed was about maybe 6 weeks ago, when I finished the yoke of my Crescendo sweater. I got to the arm, and I usually use Luca needles. I have the full set of interchangeable circulars, which are the longer ones. And I also have, I think I had those for my birthday from my partner and my little boy, my husband and my little boy. And then I think I had these ones for Christmas, which are the little shorty set. If anyone's particularly interested in seeing more of these, clearly I'm using a set of these at the moment. If anyone's interested in knowing more about these, I couldn't, when I ordered them, find tons and tons online about them. So if anyone would be interested in knowing a bit more, I'd be happy to talk a bit more about these, what comes in them, what I like them for. I use them for pretty much everything. Between the two sets, I find that I've got almost everything I need. When I got these, again, these were a present where he said, what do you want? And I said, this is what I want. My husband and I have been together a long time. Obviously there was a pair of needles in here as well. And I thought, no problem, I'll knit this sweater. It uses a 6.5 and a 6. And then I came to both sets of my needles looking for a 7, a size 7. And they don't include one. So I bought a set of the short tips because I was only using them for, I really don't like using DPNs, so I didn't want to switch to DPNs. I do have size 7 DPNs, but they're metal, and I thought that will mess with my tension again. So I've knitted in the round for small circumference using these small circumference. So they're still Lycra. I have the Umber colourway for my set, partly because I like the case, partly because I like the colour of the wood. I like the variants on it. And these are, sorry about the crackling, these are the 7mm tips. So they are 7mm circumference, which is a US 10.75. I'm assuming that's why they're difficult to get a hold of, because what an awkward size to be called in the US. In the UK, that seems really weird because they're just 7mm. These are the 3.5 inch tips, and they came really quickly. I ordered them from a UK supplier called You Felty Thing. I put the order through and it definitely went through incorrectly because initially it charged me £1 for them, and I thought, plus packaging, post and packaging, and I thought, I'm sure that's not right. It's not what I was expecting to pay on the website. The lovely lady gave me a call like within half an hour and said, I'm really sorry, do you want me to refund you for these £8 needle tips? I've only charged you £1. I don't know what's happened to my website, but I'll sort it. I said, no, it's fine. I actually want the needle tips. I just couldn't work out how I was meant to pay the £8 that they cost. It seems like a lot of money, doesn't it? £8 for 2 teeny tiny pieces of wood, but I've had a lot of use out of them, so I don't mind. Plus P&P. So she was really lovely about it. She said, thanks so much for being understanding, and sent me needles and a tea bag. How cute. Look, it's got a little bulldog on it. Strong Earl Grey. I don't really drink tea, but I still think it's cute. And thank you very much to the lovely lady from You Felty Thing. So like I said, there's no sponsored content or anything, but just if you are looking for Lycra needles in the UK, I bought my original sets from Laughing Hens, I think. They were great customer service and they answered my questions about them before I ordered, because it is quite a lot of outlay to buy yourself a full set of interchangeable circulars in a brand you've not had. I originally ordered just one set of tips and used them with the Knit Pro, or what are sometimes called Knitter's Pride cables. They're all interchangeable with each other. I don't know whether they're made in a similar place or whether it's just the fixings that are made in a similar place. Probably talking too fast, sorry. Too much excitement about knitting needles. Anyway, Laughing Hens were the people that I bought my 2 actual full sets. The mini tips, which are 3.5 inches, and the longer tips, which I think are probably 5-inch tips. And I've got these ones, like I said, from You Felty Thing. So they were my first acquisition of the month. Well, it's not a month, it's closer to 2 by the time you see this. So bear in mind that 8 weeks have gone by, probably since I filmed the last podcast, or near enough. I actually felt like I had to buy those because I wanted to finish this. I wanted to have it. I was really enjoying knitting it, and it really annoyed me that I didn't have the right size needles. So I've built a bridge and I've got over it by buying myself the right size. And now I have those tucked away, usually inside my little minis case. What I love about Lycra needles is that they come with those cases. like I said, if you want to know more, drop me a comment. Maybe talk about that next time. So the next thing I bought was, I was really, really good. I went to my local yarn shop and I purchased myself a project bag, because most of the time my projects are like this one was literally the paper bag that I bought this in held my entire project while I was knitting it. All the yarn, everything. I just popped the yarn on a table, kept coming back and grabbing another skein when I needed it, and knitted it straight out of a paper bag. I love those people who've got coordinating project bags for every season, every project. I think they're gorgeous. I can sew. I'm really, I'm a very competent sewer. I'm probably a better sewer than I am knitter, but I've not had access to my sewing machines for a while because they've been in safe storage with my parents while we planned to move house. That's another story for another time. Anyway, I bought myself a project bag. I like plain, I like simple, and this spoke to me. Craft, sleep, repeat. I apologise, that's probably backwards to you, but it's nice and big. It's kind of tote sized. It's got a zip top and also a little mini zipper inside, which I use for keeping my small things like stitch markers in. And then I normally have both of my needle cases in there now, and it just nips around the house with me as and when I need. So I bought just that, and I thought I'm really proud of myself, because for a good few weeks I've knitted up something from stash, something else from stash with my slipover or tank top or shell top or whatever you want to call it, because you can wear it with a shirt underneath or without one. And I've bought a pair of needles that finish off my set because I needed them to complete a project, and a bag which I can use anytime. And then it was Mother's Day, and so I had an excuse. So I have got an order from Lindehobby, and it's my first order from there. It took just over a week to come, I think, which I don't think is bad going at all. So I ordered it maybe on a Monday and it came on a Monday, something like that. I really like Drops from what I've used in the past, and I wanted to knit the Knit Purl Girl Aosta sweater, so I cast off this one. I bought the Aosta sweater either at the same time or a similar time, and I needed some yarn for it. Simple as that. I'd read somewhere that some people use this as a substitute for the We Are Knitters yarn that she had knitted the original sample in, and I'm not a huge fan of the price point of We Are Knitters. Having seen their collaboration with Zara, I don't have much to say about that, but I don't have We Are Knitters yarn personally. I think they are just not a company that I've ever had anything really much to do with, and I'm going to leave it at that. So I bought my Drops there. I thought this colourway was absolutely gorgeous. I love a sort of sagey green, and this has got really nice colour variation across it. I've not knit with Drops there before. I really like the idea of the blown yarn construction. It will mean it's nice and light and fluffy, that I won't get a heavy garment even though it's a chunky garment, which I really like the idea of, especially because spring here in the UK can be still really chilly. We've just had a prime example of that with like a week of snow near my house. So I bought 6 skeins of this, which is what the pattern calls for, and that's on my to cast on list. You also know that I bought in the same order the Drops Nepal, which you can see the colour of better somehow when I'm holding it nearer to my blue sweater than nearer to the white background. I think I needed 10 skeins of this for the pattern. I may end up needing slightly less, not a problem if that's the case. So that came, and whilst I was placing the order, I just really wanted to try their Kidsilk mohair. I've ordered it in this sort of pale lavendery pink colour. It's colour number 3, and I'm considering holding it with the shell pink over there and seeing what it does to the colour, because I absolutely love that shell pink, but I think it's a little bit too close to my skin tone to look good as any garment that's anywhere around my face. So I'm considering swatching it up with that. This is a total curiosity purchase. it was very not sensible to buy just a single skein of something without a plan for it. I don't know what I'm going to do with a single skein of mohair after I've tested it. However, I was paying the postage anyway. Well, I wasn't. Postage was being paid anyway as part of my Mother's Day present, and the other yarn was coming anyway, and I just thought, I'm just going to add just one of those and see what it's like. So far, to the touch, it feels okay. It doesn't feel particularly scratchy to me. I'm not really that sensitive to mohair, but the mohairs I've used have been indie dyers mohairs, so this does feel not as soft and luxurious. However, if I'm going to be holding it with something else, and the something else is really nice and soft as well, and then I'm going to block it and wash it and wear it, will I know the difference? So, an experiment in the making. And last two things. Thank you so much if you're still with me, because I think we're probably touching on an hour now. I hope that's not too long. If this is too long for a yarny chat, please do let me know below, because I could always release a little bit more often and a bit shorter. I think it's partly because I've had to wait a little bit longer to actually get the chance to record with everything else that's been going on in life. So, next acquisition, nearly the end. When I was planning the Easter sweater, I went to my local yarn shop, which, well, one of them, Knitter's Paradise. I don't know if I said that that's where this came from. My lovely tote bag came from Knitter's Paradise, which is in a place called Cold Spring Mill in Cullingworth. It's about half an hour drive from me. It's lovely. The shop owner is really nice, really friendly, really knowledgeable. She's just knitted the most dreamy Aran sweater in the universe. She's got a lovely cute dog. Really nice place to go. And the upstairs is an outdoor wear shop, which is very useful if we go as a family. So they stock lots of Sirdar yarn. Sirdar is a West Yorkshire based brand. I believe that this particular one, it's registered in Wakefield, which is not far at all from here, but I believe this particular yarn was spun in Italy. This is like a chained construction, so following on from the Drops Air, that interesting construction. I just want to see what it's like. So I have bought, originally thinking spring sweater, I had got grey and yellow, and I was thinking of doing matching, because it would look really cute and I can't often match with my little boy, matching Badger and Bloom sweaters by I'm gonna butcher her name, I'm sure. Venetzel? Anyway, Badger and Bloom sweater. She does a kids one and an adult one, and I thought there'll be no brain work because it will tell me everything I need to cast on. I can just follow the pattern. But again, I'm substituting yarn, so I'd have to swatch first. I know I should swatch every time, and I am quite good at swatching, but occasionally I don't. If I was using the correct yarn, I probably wouldn't. So I bought quite a large quantity of the yellow because I know I'd like that to be a main colour. I love yellow, so does my little boy. It looks okay on both of us. It's like a deep mustardy yellow. I think they're meant to be heritage colours. This is called Sirdar Heirloom, and I think some colours are being discontinued. I don't know if the yellow is one of them. At Knitter's Paradise, some things they sell in like big bags, and if you're buying a certain number of skeins, then they can end up cheaper, or like at a discount. So these are £3 something each, and it's only 25 grams, but because it's that chained construction, I think you get about 100 meters, she says. Yeah, 105 meters in a skein. So if you're going by the length amount of yarn that you need instead of the weight, then obviously you can get quite a lot of yarn quite quickly by buying the 25 gram balls. I've bought 3 packs of these. They're a 10 a pack. So I've now got an inordinate amount of this mustard colour. But I do really love mustard. It is one of my colours that it's not a million miles off that Merino ink gold colour, is it? Anyway, it's one of the colours I really like. I wear it pretty much all year round, so does my little boy. So I thought, I don't mind having a full sweater quantity each of that. So I've got 10 skeins of this. No, 30 skeins. 30 skeins of that. They're only 25 skeins, that's why. It's my story and I'm sticking to it. It was pretty much all they'd got because it's 3 packs of 10. Then I bought a full pack of 10 of the grey because I thought either that pack will do a full kids sweater. I would hope it would do more than that, but I'm not totally sure how yarn heavy this will get once I start knitting it up. I don't know how much I'm going to need for a garment really. The garments that are designed for it by Sirdar are not especially my taste. So I was thinking Badger and Bloom. However, those patterns are not the most size inclusive, and I do prefer to knit from a size inclusive pattern where I can. So I thought I'm going to make this Easter sweater. Maybe I can use up some of that yellow and grey for Monty for an Easter sweater. That's my little boy's name. And I bought just 2 corresponding single skeins in like this. I think it's called Mother of Pearl. It's absolutely beautiful. Really tricky to capture the colourway, but it is this sort of silvery with the tiniest hint of pinky lilac to it, and a powder blue, because I thought that might be right for the colourwork. Then I swatched. It's not an ideal yarn for colourwork, in my opinion. It will be fine for like alternate colourwork, like on the Badger and Bloom, but I think for like a picture-y one, like the little bunny that I've planned out, it wasn't going to be quite right when I swatched. So I felt like I'd wasted a really long time swatching. Actually, it wasn't a waste of time because it saved me loads of time knitting most of a jumper and then being unhappy with it. So that's why we swapped. So I've now got all that, and I'm not 100% sure which sweaters I'm going to knit with it, but there's no rush. I've got plenty of things cast on. I have a plan for his Easter sweater, so they're going to sit for a bit and I'm going to decide what to do with them. If you have any suggestions for like a simple colourwork sweater that might work in this, it's 90% wool and 10% nylon. I'm assuming the nylon is like is something to do with like the core of the chain maybe. It's really, really super soft, and my little boy is quite sensitive to, he calls them itchy wools. One day he'll be educated. He calls this kind of thing like, you know, like the true wool. He calls that itchy yarn. So he knows the word yarn though. So yeah, he's gonna love this. I'm just not sure what it's gonna become yet. And last of all, speaking of itchy wool, this is my very final acquisition, and that means that I think I haven't spent a great deal of money over these sort of 8 weeks of my own money. Just that one present that was like, I still think I only paid, Drops was such good value, and Lindehobby often have it on like sale or deals or offers that have limited timings on them. So I think for under 50 UK pounds, I had got the yarn for 2 sweaters plus my experimental yarn. I think that's reasonable. Or maybe just over £50, including the delivery and everything. But they do cover your customs into the UK. So then I was in a local charity shop this week, and I knew I was going to record the podcast. That had nothing to do with me being in the charity shop. But just in the nick of time for my acquisitions, this came along. Charity shop cone. I've never bought one before. There were 5 or 6 of them, and I had to really resist because these were a bargain. These cones were £1.50 each. £1.50! You don't get anything for £1.50 ever. So I had a really good look at all of them. My little boy was with me and he thought it was very interesting. He was like, "These are like your cones, mummy." Yeah, they are. They're really similar. However, at least one of them was like cotton or cotton linen. I know that I wouldn't knit with that. So I've left it there for someone else to get a great bargain. One of them was, or 1 or 2 of them were unidentified, but they felt a bit squeaky. I feel like they were acrylic, left them on the shelf. I'm trying really hard not to buy things that I know I won't knit with, or that I think that I might not knit with, unless I've got a purpose for it. I don't now buy a non-natural fibre. Then I saw this, and I think this is wool. It feels woolly. It feels almost identical to the Woolyknit cones back here. I live under an hour from the Woolyknit factory. I don't know how long they've been functioning for or how old this cone is. Lots of them looked very old. This one's on a plastic cone. So it's harder to tell how old this is. But when you pull it out, it's a bit snappy, but I think most things would be snappy. Like if I just pulled on that, I think that would also snap. I brought it home and I tested it by taking a small section off, looping it round and lighting it in a safe manner inside a little glass container that's like a candle holder, so I knew it could handle it, and it smells like an animal fibre when it burns. So I am pretty convinced that that's 100% wool. It would work really nicely for colourwork. It smells really nice. It does have a little bit of charity shop smell about it, but not like a really bad one. It smells more woolly than charity shoppy. Obviously, after I knitted it up, I would wash the garment anyway, so I'm not concerned about it being dusty or old. I mean, it's on a cone. It could still be full of spinning oil. When I brought it home, I was like, look at this! My husband sort of shared my enthusiasm, and he was like, it's really big. How much is there? So it's been on the scales as well. We've got like baking scales, so I just wipe them down afterwards. And it weighs almost 600 grams. Obviously, that includes the cone at the centre, but that's not going to weigh more than 100 grams, is it? So I've got at least 500 grams of what I strongly suspect is maybe a Highland wool or just a decent woolly wool, and it's in this beautiful grey marl colour. So I feel like people all the time are like, oh, a mystery cone or a charity shop cone. I'll now have a mystery cone of my own. And on that note, thank you so much for watching. If you've stayed with me to the end, you deserve some sort of award. Well done. Made it to the end. Thank you so much for sharing this time with me, and I hope to speak to you all again soon and give you an update. Thank you for watching. Bye!